So tonight's agenda is a town hall discussion focusing on the long-range fiscal planning of the city. With the upcoming expiration of Measure E and our significant budget challenges, it's critical that the community come together, understand what we're facing, and provide input into possible solutions. The City Council is committed to hearing what you think and then incorporating those thoughts into possible solutions that will serve our community over the long haul. So tonight's town hall represents the next step in a months-long, I would say years-long effort to bring every corner of Palos Verdes estates into the conversation about the city's long-range financial planning and service priorities. Since that first meeting, so we had our last town hall was on April 15th, and the only reason I remember that is because it was tax day, so maybe you remember it too. But since that meeting, we've had several budget workshops, we've had public hearings, and actually on June 24th, our last city council meeting, we did adopt a budget for the fiscal year 25-26. Behind the scenes, we've had some extra work done, and before I drill down into that, let me just I'll set some extra little housekeeping items for the evening. So there's a prepared presentation. It'll be about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And then after that, we will have interactive public comment. So typically public comment is kind of a one-way thing. A speaker comes and says what they have to say, and then the next speaker comes. But this way, and you'll notice that it was noticed on the agenda, we have organized the public comment as a Q&A. So members of the public can address the city council, and there can be a dialogue between that speaker and the city council. There's still a limit of 3 minutes per person. So if you speak for 1 minute, there's 2 minutes for back and forth. If you speak for 2 minutes and 59 seconds, that leaves 1 second for a dialogue. So plan accordingly. And we do have a hard stop at 8:30, so we need to manage to that timeline as well. So we'll get started here. So I'm going to start with some introductions. I see many, many, many familiar faces in this room, so I'm probably already telling you things you already know, but for the sake of some people who may not come to these things, I'm your mayor, Victoria Lozzi. After serving as your elected city treasurer from 2017 to 2019, I was elected to city council in 2019, along with Mayor Pro Tem Michael Kemps and Council Member David McGowan. And then in the last election in November of 2024, our newest city council colleagues, Derek Lazaro and Craig Quinn, joined us. But now they've been here for 6 months, so I'd say you're not new anymore, and the honeymoon's over, so sorry. You're old now. And then hopefully you can see him behind me, but our city manager is Kerry Coleman, and he joined us in March of 2024, and in July of 2024 became our permanent city manager. And so actually I will congratulate him on his 1-year anniversary with us. Very nice. And Kerry has over 20 years of public administration experience, and we're very happy to have him here in Palos Verdes Estates. So the City Council has been focused on the upcoming expiration of Measure E for quite some time. We've been proactively planning for that. About 6 months ago, the council assigned council members David McGowan and Derek Lazaro to work together as a committee dedicated to analyzing the city's current and future financial outlook, and then bringing that information back to the city council, back to the community for discussion, which brings us to these town halls. So it's not even hours. I can't even measure the amount of time, hours and hours and hours and hours. And so we do thank them for their work because it's a lot. So at this point, we have for the prepared presentation, I'm going to ask Councilmember McGowan to come up that way and do the presentation. And then I'll come back again with the housekeeping items on the Q&A, but we'll do the Q&A when he's finished.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. As the mayor just introduced the topic, both Councilmember Lazaro and I have spent a great deal of time looking at our future and what are the needs of our community. And tonight's discussion is going to focus on what those needs of our community are as we look out over the next 10 years. And I emphasize the word needs, because these are the things that the residents have communicated back to us of their concerns, the need for what we have to do from a mandated perspective as a city, our police department, our fire department, public safety, all this gets wrapped together. And tonight we're going to have a presentation as to where we currently stand. But I want to encourage all of you to consider this as a living document. We are continually evolving and learning new things daily. And I'm going to talk about some areas where we need to do a considerable amount of additional homework. We're not there yet. And we're going to be using some assumptions that we think are realistic, but yet they are unfounded with specific details. So let me begin. The conclusion that we've come up with is PVE is at a critical juncture. It has reached the end of the road. And the reason I'm saying that, it's for a multitude of reasons. We lack adequate revenue to maintain existing services. Our public safety parcel tax is known as Measure E, is expiring, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. We have a deteriorating infrastructure without adequate reserves. As a matter of fact, they're almost non-existent at this stage. And last but not least, our pension liabilities are growing. So what does this mean for the residents? I'm going to get right to the point. A significant revenue increase is required immediately. Our city revenues are primarily from you, our residents. We have very little revenue from other sources, and we have to rely upon our homeowners and residents in our community to pay our bills. So this presentation will provide a background of where we are at the moment. I'm going to talk about how it may impact you as a resident. We'll also talk about meeting the service needs of our community. We're going to have a definition of some anticipated needs that are over and above where we currently are. And you'll find out that these are basically needs that a lot of the residents are asking and demanding. And last but not least, if funding is not secured, what services may be impacted? Because if we can't pay our bills, we're going to have to figure out ways to reduce services to our residents, which the council does not want to do that. So let's talk about the revenue. Where do we get our revenue? It's very simple. I mentioned that the residents are our primary source of revenue. We get about 8% coming from our concessions, including the club we're in right now, along with the beach club, stables, and tennis club. The remaining 18 or so percent is from various revenues, fees, and reimbursements that are paid to the community. But as you will note, over 75% of our revenue comes from the people sitting in this room and all your neighbors. With or without Measure E, expenses are outpacing revenues. Very bad sign. Let me go on and talk a little bit about Prop 13. We're all very familiar with that law that was passed over 40 years ago. And there's been good things and bad things that have come to residents of Palos Verdes Estates as a result of Prop 13. This dollar bill represents your tax dollar, and I'm going to talk about this is the general tax levy that is included on your tax statement, and we'll get into that a little bit more detail in a few minutes. But if you notice over on the far left-hand side, I've shaded an area, and I've identified it as the city of Palos Verdes. 11.3% of that dollar is what the city of Palos Verdes receives to provide all our services to you folks. The rest of it is consumed by the school district, the county, various educational and other endeavors as this slide depicts. If you compare that to your neighbors on the peninsula, we have one hand tied behind our back. And let me explain why. If you go back at the time Prop 13 was determined, and the Board of Supervisors of the LA County did an allocation formula to all the 86 or 7 jurisdictions within the county. There was a special allocation made to the Los Angeles County Fire District. At that point in time, Palos Verdes Estates had our own fire department, for those of you that may remember. In the late 80s, approximately 1986, the city made the determination that they wanted to go and contract with LA County Fire. And that's where we are today. The sad part about it is the allocation formula coming out of Prop 13 never changed. So if you are to compare with your neighbors in Rancho or Rolling Hills Estates, you're going to find that their equivalent share of the tax dollars is twice what we receive in Palos Verdes Estates. This slide depicts we get 11.3 cents out of that dollar that we just looked at, whereas Rancho gets 23%, Rolling Hills 23%, and Rolling Hills Estates up to 24%. That's a combination of what they receive as their share of the tax dollar, but they don't have to pay for LA County Fire. What is Measure E? As we've gotten into this process, we found that there's a lot of people in the community that don't understand what Measure E was all about. A lot of new residents have joined the community since it was passed. Measure E was a voter-approved parcel tax that funds a portion of the PVE Police Department. Let me give you a brief history. After Palos Verdes contracted with LA County Fire, they had a different type of a parcel tax. Some of you folks may remember Measure D, which was renewed once or twice, and then it failed a number of years ago. And it failed because they had anticipated a 6% escalator, and the residents were nervous of that amount, which actually turned out to be a conservative estimate, and it failed. And as a result of that failure, the city had to dip into its piggy bank or its reserves to pay bills, and we never replaced the money, in addition to other utilizations that have gone on utilizing reserve dollars. The salvation was to put in Measure E, which was a $5.1 million fixed number that was to fund a portion of the Palos Verdes Police Department. A portion. It never was intended to fund the entire police department, but a portion of it. Why is it disappearing? Because it has a sunset. That sunset is in fiscal year 26-27, which is just coming up. And I want to pause for just 1 second and give you a little bit of information that the length of time it takes to get the story out to our constituents, to get something on the ballot, to get it approved, to get it sent to the LA County, to get it on your tax statement, which goes out once a year, can be upwards of 18 to 24 months lead time. We are at the end of the road, as I said earlier. Keep in mind that if we were to make a decision tonight to increase taxes X dollars, we wouldn't see the benefits of that for at least 18 to 24 months. This is an example of a residence tax bill here in Palos Verdes Estates. And I've redacted some of the critical data to provide autonomous information. But I want to focus you on a couple of line items on this tax bill. If you look at the very top line, and you can go home and pull up your tax statement, and you're going to find the top line, it says general tax levy. And in this particular example, their tax levy is $22,430. That's the number that the city receives 11.3% of. So we only get $2,500 out of that. The rest of it goes elsewhere. Now, if you look further on your tax statement, you're going to find a line item that is entitled PVE Law Enforcement. This is the parcel tax that I just referred to as Measure E. This is what's expiring. And in this particular example, this homeowner has a Measure E parcel tax of $715. The difference between this line item and the one I just showed you is 100 cents of the dollar comes to PVE. The other is we get 11%. Big difference. So when you hear about we need all this revenue generation, it's not taking the whole tax bill up. This particular example is a $25,000 or almost a $26,000 real estate tax bill, and only about a little over $32 or $300 of it is coming to the PVE. That's our government. Let's move on as how it may impact you. Our current parcel tax is made up of it's a combination of a fixed fee and a cost per square foot. The fixed fee is $342 per lot, and it's 20 cents per square foot, depending on the size of your home. So the home that I just used as an example is a little bit less than the average square footage house in Palos Verdes Estates. Some of our larger homes on the top of the hill or even down below, much greater square footage, they're going to be paying proportionally more. The average parcel in Palos Verdes is paying just less than $900 a year on this particular tax Measure E. The amount and how the replacement parcel tax will be calculated in the future, assuming we can pass one, is yet to be determined. I think we need to go back and review the base number because inflation has made a great deal of difference, and whether we keep it at 20 cents per square foot or some other multiplier remains to be seen. It's just how we would allocate it once the total dollars are determined. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about the service needs in our community. I'm going to do this in two different sections. The first one is operational, and the second one is going to be funding our infrastructure needs. Meeting our service needs started with our existing service levels and recognizing that some are already inadequate. And I want to also point out that there are certain areas where we have cut back in the past in order to try to manage a fiscally prudent budget. Everyone in the room can reflect the fact that we didn't do a lot of weed abatement for a year or two, and the weeds got out of control, and it was a major risk. And we had to retain specialized services to make that happen. We recently passed a budget for our 26 where we reduced our tree trimming budget. And it was already too low, in my candid opinion, but we had to reduce it again because we have to try to make our scarce resources last. These are all impacting services to the residents in the current fiscal year, which started today. Recognizing that additional cuts and deferrals may be required before a replacement tax can be implemented and cash received is one of our challenges. We hope we don't have to do that, but we are between a very difficult situation and depleting revenues. If we look at the operational side, in determining our service costs, what does it truly cost to provide the required services our community expects and deserves? We've tried to listen to all of you folks. We've tried to put that into our analysis, not only today, but with anticipated inflation as we look forward for the next 5 to 10 year horizon. And the horizon that Councilman Lazaro and I have been focusing on is really the next 10 years. We're trying to make sure we don't have to go through this exercise in 2 or 3 years. It's too painful. We have two primary types of expenditures. They're people and their contracts. We used a baseline analysis to look at our staffing, our contracts, and we adjusted those in our assumptions for inflation. And I will tell you, we use different inflation assumptions for different types of expenses. Public safety got a higher growth rate than administrative type expenses, as an example. In looking at our anticipated needs going forward, we targeted public safety improvements, investments, which included some staff additions to maintain the 9/11 response time and crime preservation efforts. We have included in these numbers an assumption that there's a couple of additional police officers in later years that are assumed after the successful passing of a parcel tax. Not before, but afterwards. And these are based upon the judgments of our city manager and police chief. We've also made some assumptions on expanded weed abatement and open space management. We're concerned about the fire risk. After Palisades in Altadena, we've got fire risks in our community as well. And we haven't been maintaining those to the degree that a lot of residents, including myself, would like to see. So we were anticipating having to spend more money as we go forward on maintaining the open spaces. Enhanced tree maintenance. That's another area I talked about a few minutes ago. In the current budget year, we had to reduce it. But as we go forward, we know we need to enhance the tree maintenance budget, not only from a safety perspective, but from preservation of our urban forest. Things are overgrown. They cause risk. They become view issues or preservation issues. There's all sorts of arguments that the neighbors get into. And we, as a city, on the publicly owned trees, need to do what we should be doing. And we haven't been doing that in the last number of years. We also put in here some project-oriented expenses. We know that there's a couple of 3 or 4 things that need to be done, that we need to build dollars in. It's not an ongoing expense, but a great example is our accounting and information systems in our city is antiquated, archaic, and needs to be replaced. But that's going to cost some money. We need to put contingency funding in here. We know that there's going to be surprises. And historically, we haven't included anything for contingencies. We run into these contingencies almost monthly where we have additional expenses that we hadn't anticipated. This last year in the budget, the budget year that just ended, I think we enhanced our original budget approximately $1 million or more due to unanticipated surprises. And last but not least is the long-term financial stability and planning, which really deals with pensions and the incremental pension obligations. And I wanted to talk just briefly about the pensions. Where we are today, we have unfunded pensions of approximately $20 million. This has grown by $6 million since 2018. Most of this debt sits in high-cost safety program. In other words, these are our police officers and some of our former public safety employees. To slow the growth, the city would have to contribute an incremental approximate $1.3 million. That baseline is to prevent additional debt, not eliminate it. You will find in a few minutes that we have built in a $1.3 million incremental pension reduction into these numbers that I'm going to talk about. We have a current policy for pension debt, which commits $250,000 annually, and then a portion of any surpluses if we have any. In the last few years, we've been running deficits, not surpluses. But since that policy was put into play, we have roughly paid down approximately $2 million of that debt. The policy doesn't cover enough to stop the debt from growing without large surpluses each year. We will not reach an 80 to 90% funded status unless significantly more is paid consistently. Right now, this policy was helped crafted by the Financial Advisory Committee. I think as we go forward, they need to revisit it because some of our situations, as I see it going forward, we're going to need to revisit this policy to determine what the right numbers should be on an annual basis, incremental numbers. Bottom line, the policy is a meaningful start, but not a full solution. This slide is a pictorial of how our expenses are growing over the next 10 years. The bottom two darker bars represent our public safety area, and then the Our public works is the yellow area, and on top of it, you've got community development and administrative activities. But you can see that and we anticipate with just conservative inflation assumptions, we're going to be spending upwards of $40 million or more on operational expenses over in 10 years. Historically, we've been under roughly 22 million. That's a huge increase. If you look at Measure E and our revenue streams, this dip in 2027 represents the graph if we don't replace Measure E. And then we do see some marginal growth in revenue because of inflationary factors that go into real estate taxes and your home and turnover of home values and so forth. But if you look at that against the expenses, our expenses are growing, as I said earlier, faster than our revenues. And that space in between is a growing concern. Our revenue projections assume a parcel tax is not replaced. With or without the Measure E, expenditures are outpacing revenues, as I previously said. So let's talk a little bit about infrastructure. The analysis excludes police and fire facilities. Emergency repairs are addressed, but major improvements remain on the unfunded CIP list. Future solutions may be needed or may vary as the scope and cost. This is an area that I'm going to talk a little bit more about that we need to do more homework on. We don't have our analysis as complete as we'd like it. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone in this room. Our infrastructure is aging. It's 75 to 100 years old, and we haven't been properly maintaining, and we've been deferring a lot of activities that should have been done on an ongoing basis. If it were your own personal home, you would have been repairing the roof, or you would have been repainting the house, or doing all the maintenance that you need to maintain your property. Infrastructure, I'm talking about everything from the sewers, the streets, the city hall buildings, the cliffs. Anytime we have to do maintenance work, shoring up there's a retaining wall on Palos Verdes Drive that we have to deal with right now. It's all the fixed assets, if you will, of the city. And it's a great question because the financial reporting for municipalities is much different than corporate America. And we don't reflect our capital assets on the balance sheet the way corporate America does or depreciate them. That's one of the problems we have with not having the resources available to repair and replace. But it's a good question. Our capital needs currently exceed $25+ million. As a matter of fact, our city staff brought a list of CIP projects to the council on last Tuesday night, a week ago tonight. I think it was in excess of $45 million. That number is going to continue to grow, and as we get our homework done, that is a major issue for this community to deal with. Capital Improvement Fund. That's just the nickname of the reserve fund that we put money into. It's like a savings account. Great questions. Please keep them coming. Yes, sir. Well, they want me to finish first.
Nope, sorry, he didn't really mean that. He didn't. Keep going.
Yeah. I just.
So hold that thought, please.
Yeah, you can catch me later. Okay, on our infrastructure, we need to plan for the long-term investment so we have adequate funding. We need to do a reserve and a cost analysis study. This is one of the project-oriented issues that I referred to earlier. We need to take an inventory of all of our infrastructure, as the question was asked earlier, and look at what its current condition is, what its remaining useful life is, when it will be expected to be needing to be repaired, replaced, or whatever. And then we end up doing a cash flow analysis saying that, okay, in year 5, I'm going to need X millions of dollars to do the following projects. And we've got to start saving today to get to year 5. This is a common practice that's utilized in homeowners associations, for those that are familiar with them, but it's the kind of concept we need to employ for the city. This golf club is a great example where they have done exactly that, and therefore they have a better handle on what their capital improvements are in the future. And I believe they're putting away approximately $1.3 million a year just for the golf club, which is much smaller than our city. We are anticipating in our analysis of needing to put aside $4.25 million annually in order to build up enough reserves in order to deal with our future infrastructure as we currently understand it. Pulling all these components together, we take our projected revenues, we look at our expenditures, we've got to fund for these capital transfers because you need cash to do that. Yet we need to maintain our cash flows and emergency reserves. And I just want to pause for a second on the cash flow management issue. Because of the nature of the way this community works, we have to basically spend the first 6 months of our expenditures before we receive revenue in that fiscal year. So therefore, we have to have at least 50% of our expenditure budget available in order for our treasurer to make sure that the checks clear the bank. We're suggesting that a parcel tax needs are at least $17.5 million. In contrast, if you want to compare a number, I mentioned $5.1 million earlier. We need to replace it if we are to fulfill all these needs with at least 17.5. We've got a number of things that have to be considered as well, which are going to impact the number. I talked about Measure E did not have a cost of living, or what I call a COLA, feature to it. And as a result, in the last few years, the city has gotten increasingly strained because of the inflationary pressures. So the council is going to need to look at what type of a cost of living increase we might put in place. It could have a collar, a ceiling, and not to exceed, but we're going to need to do something to reflect ongoing inflationary pressures. I talked earlier about the allocation formula. I think we need to revisit that. We're not sure if once we land on the parcel tax size, how the best way to allocate it among our residents, or 55,000 homes or whatever we have in the community. We also have on the table looking at any assistance that may or may not be provided for low-income senior exemptions. And last but not least is the sunset. Ideally, this is, as I said earlier, a painful exercise. If the longer the period of time we can keep a parcel tax in play, the beneficial to the residents will be. But residents also want to be able to revisit these situations periodically. The last one was 10 years. If we go another 10 years, we could go 12 or 15. We have to look at the sunset and basically in conjunction with election years, because you don't want to do it in an off election year because it's too costly. All right. You might say, you talk about $17.5 million. Tell me how would that be utilized? We had a presentation recently where our council was meeting, and our mayor came up with the idea. She said, David, how does that break down? And I had to go back and put this analysis together, but she was a great question, and I applaud her for helping out with providing that direction. But let's look at it this way. This is in year one, the 17.5, if that were the number we landed on. 5.1 replaces parcel E. We're talking about $4.4 million being transferred to capital transfers and equipment transfers. Equipment transfers is a different set aside, which I didn't talk about earlier. That's the reason the number's a little larger. It really is focused on replacing our squad cars and our vehicles within our community and machinery and equipment. Projected structural deficit right now of 2.6. Wildlife risk management. This is enhanced tree trimming, weed mitigation, and so forth. $1.5 million. The pension pay down I mentioned earlier of 1.3. We've built a $500,000 contingency in on an annual basis. We've got a $250,000 in for special projects. And the increase in the fund balance, as I indicated from a cash flow perspective, we've got to maintain at least every time we increase our expenses by $1, we have to put an extra 50 cents in a reserve fund in order to cover cash flow. So that's where you get to 17.5, ladies and gentlemen. What services may be impacted without the additional funding? Well, we have a heightened risk of service issues, which limited resources may constrain critical services like weed abatement, tree maintenance, which are essential to managing fire risk and protecting homes. Our infrastructure pressures will grow. Without depreciated capital, funding deferred maintenance on the infrastructure is going to become more costly and potentially at risk. And also our service delivery delays. Without adequate funding, the city services would be impacted through potential staffing reductions. In conclusion tonight, this is the time we need the residents to get involved. We need to hear from you. This is your opportunity to help us work through this challenge. It's not the five of us on the city council making these decisions, but we're trying to do it collaboratively with the rest of you in this room and throughout the community. We have a serious problem that has to be addressed. The future of Palos Verdes depends upon your thoughtful community engagement. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you, David.
David?
Good evening. My name is Brooks McKinney. I live just around the corner here from the golf course. I just have a very basic question. Just as a homeowner with a limited budget, if I'm running into things that I would like to do but can't do, I have to make the decision, what am I not going to do? Am I not going to take that vacation? I'm not going to buy that couch. Am I not going to go out to eat? Whatever. So my question to the city is really that question. Given the budget shortfall, are there things that we're choosing to not do in the interest of furthering our current budget and our future budget? Thank you.
Thank you.
Take this one.
Sure.
Thank you. All right.
And, yep.
Yep. Is this on? Okay. So my answer to that question is that it is astonishing what we don't do and what we have already cut. And one of the greatest and gravest concerns that I had upon being elected and frankly looking at the city's budget as a candidate was how much we've cut already. And we have cut FTEs, we've cut positions, we have deferred or canceled numerous capital projects. And many of those capital projects, as you heard, they're funded through what are called transfers. So those are transfers from the general fund to the capital fund. We have a section of PV Drive, which is near Bluff Cove, which is, I don't want to say it's ready to fall into the ocean, but it needs repairs urgently. We barely had enough money to do that. So there are real things that we have deferred. I think we've gone way beyond the deferrals that are appropriate. I think we're in the risk zone at this point. The surface of City Hall's parking garage is leaking water every single time it rains. As that penetrates in, it gets into the cement and the rebar. Rebar is iron, it rusts. You have to reseal that. You have to do all the repair. Otherwise, it spalls. When it rusts, it expands, it spalls, the concrete cracks. You get into real problems. So it's remarkable what we've already cut. In my opinion, we've cut too deeply. It's starting to affect services that residents used to enjoy. So there is nothing else to cut. There are no vacations to defer.
So I'm going to jump in there and ask the Mayor Pro Tem to use the last 20 seconds on a different perspective, but sorry, only 20 seconds.
Well, I think I'll add to the perspective. Derek addressed capital. I'll go to pensions. You know, when the three of us were first elected, we were paying about $800,000 a year to CalPERS and required pension debt payments. And now that's approaching $2 million. So that's $1.3 million of money we can't spend on tree trimming, road maintenance, sewers, and everything else that adds up.
Okay, so I'm sure you'll continue that thought on another question. I'm confident.
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
Next, please.
Good evening, Jim Cizak. It's clear we need to raise some more revenue, but if you're going to go through the pain of doing this, make sure it's enough. And if you think that 17.5 million, whatever you come up with, don't lowball it. Make sure it's adequate. So you go through this pain once, and we don't go through this, and 5 years later we go, shoot, we should have asked for more money. And the other point is, have you thought about segregating funding for safety? You know, the parcel tax, as you approach the voters, it's only for public safety. It's for police and fire. And the funds are solely dedicated to that. And all these other things that need attention at the city, you manage from the tax revenues, the property tax revenues you get from another source. Have you thought about that?
Oh, it's like, is there a question in there? Sorry. Councilmember Quinn, do you want to jump in on that one?
Yes. Thank you for the question. We have thought about that. And in some discussions, we talked about fire, police, weed abatement, and possibly even putting part of the UAL, the pension debt in there, and, you know, just focusing on that for the parcel tax. And that's still a big number when you look at all those four things. And weed abatement can move up or down. We haven't landed on a final approach yet, but that's definitely something worth considering.
Councilmember McGowan, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I think right now how we structure any parcel tax is yet to be determined. I think what the emphasis of my presentation was to try to help identify as many of the needs and issues that we're out there dealing with. And we've got a lot of challenges that we've got to consider, and we're probably not going to have the right solution for everybody, but we're going to do the best we can.
Thank you.
1 second, Mayor Pro Tem.
I won't talk about pensions.
I
I think one of the challenges with Make It Big Enough is let's go back to what happened with D and then to Measure E. D failed with an insufficient number of votes, and then E was backed down and made too small. So, I think we all focus on E and we're like, my God, make it big enough. The challenge is when you poll it, big numbers don't get 67%. So to your point, does it make sense to split that up? As long as we're being honest with the folks and saying, look, here's the whole menu of the challenge, does it make sense to come up with a smaller number for a parcel tax that will pass? And then does it make sense to have, a revenue source for capital, for example? Absolutely, yes. Potentially that could make sense. The only thing I'll push back on there is I've been here for over 6 years. We've been talking about this challenge that whole time. And so to come back for a second one and take that second bite is not so simple, especially after the first one, after the first bite's been taken. And then you consider other things that have already been funded throughout the city and state and otherwise, and it's a challenge.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cizak.
Thank you.
Next. Oh, Mark, where'd you come from?
Marge Gwynn, loved his idea, maybe utility taxes until you get to where you need to go. Mine's about the elephant in the room that I keep on reading on Nextdoor, which kind of scares me. Are you guys really considering a citizens initiative, an initiative that only needs 50 plus 1 to pass? I know that some forms were filled out because someone posted it, and it just really scares me that you would consider kind of a short-sighted way to do it. I think you should consider something that all the residents want, not just no. Is it true?
I can take this one, Mayor.
Okay.
All right. So first of all, by definition, if there is a citizens initiative, we're not the ones that consider it
No, I just don't want to have
or
it.
drive it, or, it's something that other people in the community will presumably drive if that's the direction they're going. We can have our own personal opinions about it, right? But we're not the ones putting it on the ballot at that point.
I understand that. It just scares me that 50% would be the way it would happen.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. If you look at the polling, and if you look at how much money we need, we have a problem, right? There doesn't seem to be support, at least not yet. And, part of the reason we're doing these town halls is we'd like to try to generate more support within the community, for a number that, we'll say we're going to educate the community on our needs. I think that's officially what I'm allowed to say. I'll say one other quick thing here. The previous gentleman mentioned police and fire, and maybe we sort of put a box on that and talk about that. Police and fire for this budget year is $15.5 million. If you increase that only 3% a year, which is pretty close to what most police and fire officers get in their raises across LA County, in 10 years, that 15.5 goes to 21 million. If you increase it 7%, and there have been some years where 7% increases have happened with LA County fire contracts and their union and the sheriff's department and their union and local police forces, in 10 years at 7%, that's $30.5 million. So the point in bringing that up is, hopefully it's a lot closer to 21 million. Maybe it's somewhere between there and 30. But what sounds like a really, really huge number now, 17 million, it's not so big in 10 years. And so as we think about this, we either need to go with a smaller number and some sort of a CPI, which people have told us they don't want, or we need to go with a bigger number and a sunset that brackets it somewhere in the mix so that we're not in the situation we're in now, which is a $3 to $4 million deficit. And again, that's with cuts and with capital deferrals.
I think the scary thing is last time it was 16.4 and we were kind of thinking, it's going to go down to 12 or 14. And we're going to meet somewhere in the middle. And all of a sudden now you're coming back with 17 something. And I think it's a shock to everyone that's here that not only did you not compromise, but you went up. And that's my last comment.
Yes. And you can get in line again and make that point again.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve Fullerton. My question is less about the topic of tonight, but more longer term planning. It seems like there's a structural problem about a lack of revenue diversification. And when you think about, 30, like this fixes the immediate term problem. I'm glad we're being proactive. But when we think about 40 years down the road, are we doing anything to solve the lack of revenue diversification? And what are we are we attracting new businesses? What are we doing to solve the long term?
So there's only a handful of cities in the entire state that look like PVE. So I've got a list right in my hand. Des, I'll give you this piece of paper later. It's Hidden Hills, Rolling Hills, Atherton, Hillsborough, and Los Altos Hills. Those are basically the only cities. There's a couple of county non-incorporated areas, but those are basically the only cities in the state of California that don't have commercial revenue, like PVE. Hillsborough has a $21,000 per resident city budget. Now, I'm not suggesting that we should go, we have something closer to 5,000. I'm not suggesting that we should go anywhere near the Hillsborough numbers, but the point that I'm trying to make is this, frankly, is a referendum. What we're doing tonight and where we go with this, it is a referendum on our way of life. We either want to be in that list of cities, we either want to have a city that doesn't have commercial revenue that supports it, or we don't. Personally, I want that. Personally, I hope that we stick with what we have. But we can go in a different direction. We can have bars and restaurants and hotels. We can change this golf course into a commercial entity. There's a lot of things that we could do to raise huge amounts of money. It will completely change the city.
And I'm going to let Councilmember Quinn chime in here for a little bit if you'd like. You guys are shy.
I agree.
All right, then.
No, Derek makes a fantastic point, and it really is a matter of, we've got such a fantastic city with open space that I think most of us moved here for. And we're trying to do everything we can to maintain that. And it's going to cost money. I think it's going to be more painful if we were to go in the other direction and try to parcel or, commercial districts in among us here. In addition to what we have to deal with the housing element and density issues that we're dealing with from Sacramento. But try to keep the open space would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next.
My name is Rick Gwynn, and my question basically is on slide 25. It's all about transparency. You're talking about the $17.5 million. Okay, you talked about the bullets, about where that $17.5 million is going. You talked about the bullets, but where is all that money going? You're going to talk about the bullets, but you talk about little specifics. But you should have a spreadsheet showing exactly where all that money is going. I think everyone out here wants to know that. Okay, I think it would be better for us to know that, to know exactly where all that is going. Can you guys tell us where that is all going to go?
Yes.
So, sorry, David. So so one thing I want to direct you guys to is on the website, under this agenda item on the website is posted the presentation and all those spreadsheets. So that, I don't think it answers every single one of your questions, but it is there. Yeah. And then David, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I was just going to make that point. I should have made it at the beginning of the presentation, but all the analytics that support the numbers that I presented in that presentation are on the website, and there's I guess a copy of it right there. And there may be additional questions that you may have, but I've broken it down to various departments and areas of where the needs are in our community. Where it is, what it is lacking, and I will be very honest with you, it gets back to the infrastructure and the capital reserves. We have got to put some money into that immediately in order to get our arms around what do we need in the foreseeable future, and that is a work in process. I'm already working with Oscar, our new public works director, and the city manager on that.
I'll add into that. That goes back to the first speaker. I think Brooks was the first speaker, and you said, okay, well, I can't do everything I want in my life. I have to make some choices. And I think that those spreadsheets have, they have built-in assumptions. Okay, if I do this and I don't do that, then how much do I need? And so I think that that's really the next step for me. I'll speaking as one council member, one member of the community is to look under the covers and say, okay, well, I don't really need that, and I do need this, or if I do this in year 1 and I push that thing out until year 6, then what do I need? Right. And so I think that's where we really that is what we ask the community to do, to say, well, I don't need a this and I do need a that. And so I'd say that's the next leg of this thing. But do look on there, because the information's there. And then you can say, well, I don't like this list. I don't want anything on this list. Or, oh, wait, I want everything on this list and I don't want to compromise anything. Right.
Let me just add one thing to that. I believe our city has now set up a special email account. If you've got specific questions after you go through some of those analytics, and if you aren't getting the answers you're looking for, please send us an email. Tom, is that up and running?
Yes. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, what is that email address?
I'll do it at the end.
Okay. So there is a way to communicate back if you got specific questions, and I'll be happy to get back to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Rick. Next.
Hi there. My name is Christina Wilner, and we moved here about 4 years ago. And my question is sort of a maybe financial, because I did do a lot of stuff for the school bond. And one of the things I noticed was we had a lot of people who either, and this again is in the peninsula, not just PVE, but a lot of seniors who opt out. And I totally understand if people, with whatever numbers we might be talking, it might be very large numbers and maybe people can't afford that. And I don't know how you could structure this, but if this were to be an option, because obviously everybody who lives here, just in the past 5 years that we've lived here, the housing prices have skyrocketed and they're going up and up. So obviously if you've lived here 10, 15, 20 years, you've made a fortune on your house. Is there a way that if people so that people can't opt out. And I don't know if opting out of these property taxes or measures or whatever is an option, but is there a way to say, okay, you can opt out now, because that was such a big part of why people didn't vote for the school bond, that you say, okay, let's just pretend it's $1,000. You say, whatever the price is, we'll do some sort of NPV where you say, if you move in 15 years and you don't pay 15 years of the property or the parcel tax, that it comes out when you sell your house, so that you have a staggered thing. Because the thing that I found, I am from Los Altos Hills, and I was in Palo Alto School District, and I was on the board of PI, which is similar to your PEF. And when I got here, I was actually shocked, because I saw a couple of people on Nextdoor saying all the time, oh, as a senior, you can opt out of the school taxes, opt out of the school funds. And school funding is such a huge part of why a community grows and why you have value in a community. But we moved here, I wanted to actually first live in RPV, because I was like, oh my God, some of the views are so much better. And Jonathan's like, oh my God.
Says
in a couple houses we saw, but the police department was ultimately what brought us to PVE. We're moving from the Bay Area, and that, I feel, it's a huge value. But, fire, if we don't have weed abatement and we have fires, we have a huge problem. So everybody's obviously nobody in Altadena or anywhere has a house value, right? Because they have no house. So it is something that everybody benefits from. And if there is a way to sort of structure it that if people can't pay, that they do it upon the sale of their house, which has benefited from all the services that we have.
We actually, thank you. And we discussed that item at our last council meeting. I'm going to ask the mayor pro tem to discuss that.
Well, I don't know that. Good luck on the 22 seconds. I don't know that we talked about pay it upon sale.
No.
I think we did discuss a senior exemption, and I think the challenge with it is, on the one side, you want to be fair to, respectful of, and careful with seniors and ensure that they stay in their homes. And on the other side of the equation, you also want to be fair to the families that, are paying a $40,000 tax bill already, right?
Right.
So it's a real challenge. I'll say that in that meeting, we did not come to a consensus. It's not dead, but we did not come to a consensus to put a senior exemption into this thing. And it's different than bonds. I think by default with bonds, in particular school bonds, you have the option to opt out if you're a senior. I believe that's in state law.
It is,
Correct me
but
if I'm wrong.
people have to sort of look at that as you're benefiting, and
For sure.
I feel
Right.
that that's
Yeah.
sort of unfair as well.
Perfect.
But
Thank you.
in this case, that's not in by default. That is
Okay.
a choice as to what goes into the measure.
But thank you. I wrote that down. Thank you for the question. It's definitely on our radar. Yes.
Hey, everybody.
sir.
I'm Phil. Pleasure. The closer I got to the front of the line, the more my questions got answered.
Oh,
So that's kind of the danger of lines. There are just some realities in where we live. We're hamstrung by Prop 13. When I saw the tax bill you showed, that's less than my one installment. It's not because I own a big home. It's not because it's because of property values. So in the sense of in for a penny, in for a buck, I want to protect my home. I want to protect my haven. I want to protect this city. Now, there are just unfortunate realities. And 30 years from today, we're going to look back and go, oh, Phil only pays this much. And there'll be somebody half my age standing here going, I paid 4 times that number. Right? So it's unfortunate, but we only get to make these corrections in big quanta, and they look very large and surprising. So to the question of transparency, that's unbelievably important, and I love what you guys are doing. It would be great to get more detail. But yeah, no real question, just a comment. And last point. I would much rather, if I had to pay taxes, have every dollar go to our city and none of it take a detour to LA or the state. So thank you. Cheers.
thank you, Phil.
Yeah, well.
Next.
Hello, my name's Eric Hicks. I'm a newer resident, but my family's been here a very long time. With that said, I want to understand a little bit more, I guess, about the structural funding deficit that we have. So we're getting 11% of that 1% tax, right? And the surrounding cities get 23%. What's been done to try to facilitate us coming back to that 23% or something or similar to the surrounding, because what we're doing here, say like another measure, it's a Band-Aid. Measure D was a Band-Aid. Measure E was a Band-Aid. If we do another measure, it's going to be another Band-Aid. How do we fix the structural deficit that we're not getting funds from the county? If you can expand upon what path we went down with Janice Hahn, if we're able to sue the county over it, because this is Band-Aids to me, it seems like we're not trying to cure the illness, we're just giving it a pill. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. What if we bankrupt the city and then the county has to take us over and then they just take the whole expense?
Do you want that?
Holy cow. Okay. Who wants to take that one?
Who's moving first?
I know. All right. Mayor Pro Tem, you're first. Oh, I'm sorry, David. Did you want to do it first?
No.
Okay. Go ahead.
What I know of that's been done historically is there have been multiple city council members over a series of councils that have met with the county, have had discussions with the county supervisor, and it comes down to what Councilmember McGowan said relative to apportionment. That number was set when Prop 13 passed, and it's been in place this entire time. I think the issue is looking at what that county fire contract is. There's also been some efforts to look at potentially partnering with other cities. There have been discussions with a neighboring city to the northwest. I'm intentionally not mentioning names. Around potentially partnering with them as an option relative to providing fire services. There have been discussions about splitting out paramedic services. So there definitely have been efforts, and those things have been done. I think the challenge with apportionment is it does have to come from somewhere else. There's not going to be new revenue. So other cities are going to give up that revenue, or the county would have to reapportion it. And those have been challenging discussions. I think when the city, and I think it was 86 that this was first signed? I believe the contract with the fire department was $1 million. Now it's in the mid sevens.
Right. One other thing I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go for it.
Something else I'll just add to that is, again, other than that very short list of cities that I named, every other city in the state has substantial, if not most, of their revenue coming from commercial, hotel, et cetera. Those go up with inflation, right? Whereas our property taxes and the fact that we have a population that moves here and they tend to stay here, it means that we largely set those rates in the 70s and 80s and so forth, and we really haven't gone, we're still at that 1% increase every year. So and the only time that changes is when homes turn over. So we are, again, a very unique city. It's not just that calculation, which is part of what breaks this whole math problem. A big part of it is that commercial revenue that doesn't increase with inflation, and that deficit gap. A lot of it is created. If you sort of look back at the last 10 years of our budget documents, it's astonishing to see how much costs have gone up, including the fire contract.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Phil.
Good evening. I'm Phil Solomita. We've lived here since '96, Lynn and I. And I really do appreciate the work that has to be put into this. I've done a lot of planning. I did get an MBA and work in some corporations. And so I understand what looking ahead and watching inflation, and trying to guess at so much that's going to take place. And I've seen some people do very well with that, in the sense that the more detail you put into it, the more accurate your result is. So there's a lot of work being done here. I'm up here to thank you for that, but also to put a little more perspective on whether you have a political action committee or somebody put a parcel tax on the ballot versus the city doing it. My understanding is that you might have a 50% or 51% majority to pass that. And some people are uncomfortable with that, sort of like that 1 extra percent can just shove it down everybody's throat. I was very active in getting Measure E, not formulated, but in getting it publicized and mailing and making phone calls back in the day. And I know how much effort that was for a Band-Aid that had a very limited time element to it. One of the frustrating things to me was that everyone who wanted to say no had twice as much voting power as everyone who had to say yes in order to get the thing passed. I don't think it passed even by 1% in the end, when all the final results trickled in. And if it hadn't passed, we'd have had another several $1 million go out of our reserves before the next attempt could have taken place. So while I might personally love to be able to mandate that you had to have 55% to pass something so that 1% couldn't shove it down everybody's throat, nonetheless, I think, again, to me, it's painful that 1/3 of the voters can outvote 2/3 of the voters, essentially. So, I mean, that's just a perspective I wanted to offer everybody on that.
Right. Thank you, Phil.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Next.
Hi, my name's Arlo Sorensen. I've been here since 1970. Anyway, two things. One, I don't understand, from a corporate executive standpoint, we did away with pensions a long time ago and put in 401ks. Public employees have not done that, and I don't understand. If we never raise the question, it'll never happen. But public employees should be under the same situation as we are. If we don't have a pension, they shouldn't have a pension. They can do a 401k just like we all did a 401k. So I would like to have you at least think about that. I know you got unions and all that sort of thing, but it's unfair that they get benefits that we as a public don't get anymore. So just a thought. Second thing was, I'd like to have Janice Hahn come to one of our town halls. I think our representatives in Sacramento should attend our town halls. They do nothing for us because you talk about, well, if you take it from Compton or someplace else to give it to us, they're not going to go for that. But at least we are their constituents as well. So therefore, they should hear what we're trying to do and what our problems are, which I think our representatives in Sacramento and in the LA County should listen to that and say, hey, we need help. And the state and Ted Lieu as well as congressmen and our senators, we need to go to these people and say, yeah, we are unique, but we like being unique, and there's nothing wrong with being unique. But you're our representative. You need to listen to our problems and help us as well. So I thank you for all your efforts. I think they're very well done. Yeah, and if Janice Hahn isn't going to help us, don't vote her in. If Ted Lieu isn't going to represent us, don't vote him in.
I know.
Okay, it's time that we stand up and say, listen to us. We're no different than anybody else. We live in a nicer place probably, but we worked our ass off to get here. Okay, and it just seems to me like we ought to have those people attend these meetings to listen to our problems as well as other people's problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Arlo. And I think you had a lot in there, a lot of comments in there that are just super common frustrations, right, for all Californians, and probably not one of them was within the control of a city, and they're, kind of dropped on us from state. And I think you're exactly right. You have to, unless you vote in a different set of people, you're not going to get a different answer. And so I think you raised all good points, and yeah, all good points. Next.
My name is Kevin Lanigan. I've been a homeowner in Lanada Bay area for 47 years. And I was sitting next to Arlo, and he copied my notes. Because a lot of them are what I'm going, Arlo, stop that. Copy my homework. I love our police department. But in the same vein as what Arlo was addressing, one of the most startling sights amongst all the different diagrams that David had put up there was the red line talking about pension obligation. It was the only line that was straight lined at a 30 or 40% slope. All the other lines were jagged and had differences year on year on year, but that pension obligation just goes straight up. Mm-hmm. And it begs the question, why are we not addressing pensions, renegotiating? I know it's a third rail of politics, but my God, it just doesn't seem fair. As Arlo articulated, most people who have gone through businesses have gone through I remember my first 401k was way back in 1982. So long time ago that 401k self-funded futures have been available. Why aren't we doing that or giving it consideration?
Yeah.
That's my point.
Thank you. Actually, Mayor.
It's Arlo's point too, but he copied my notes.
You said it better.
Yeah.
Just kidding, Arlo.
I never thought you'd ask.
Please, Michael.
This has been my number one frustration since prior to being elected. And I went throughout the community and had meeting upon meeting upon meeting. And, I agree completely. I wish to the fairness of our employees that they could be in 401k plans and we could match them and we can control it and do it exactly the same way. Mm-hmm. Our hands are cuffed to these chairs by CalPERS. They make choices about the way that they invest their funds. Sorry, I'm not going to hold back. Here I go. They make choices about the way that they invest their funds where they underperform over a 10, 15, 20-year period by somewhere between 1% and 3%, depending on the average and the number of years. There are a small number of things that we can do to improve the problem. 1, first, recognize it, talk about it. 2, start actually funding the actual cost of pensions on an annual basis that our employees are actively incurring and stop that debt from growing. That's number 1. Number 2, if we have available resources and surplus, which is how that original plan was developed, then we can actually pay additional funds down against those, what we call amortization bases of classic plans. Quickly, and I have 10 seconds. We have 4 plans. 2 of the plans are classic plans, and those classic plans have employees that were employed prior to 2013. Those are the vast majority of our pension debt. If we address those amortization bases and start paying those down and get those under control, we can actually have some future benefit to stop that growth and to stop the interest growth on an annual basis that's growing.
But doing that takes money.
Next.
But if we don't.
Thank you. I'm your neighbor near City Hall, and I've been there almost 30 years now. And I'm going, sorry, how's that?
Come a little
Okay?
closer. Come a little closer to the microphone, Darcel. I can't hear you.
That's just too much. Okay.
Hold it out.
Okay, that's better.
Okay. Speak loudly.
Okay. Hello. I'm your neighbor next to City Hall that is going to be the short and a little bit of a long arm of memory with our city council and the judgments that have been made. Tonight, I appreciate you here. I appreciate hearing some fresh ideas. I appreciate fresh infusion. And maybe there'll be a popping of the bubble that has been the previous council. I'd like to say, does everyone enjoy the quiet of the summer in our Malaga Cove Plaza? Because 3 senior council members here that are asking us to lead us with their judgment would have had our environment totally torn up with the Measure M and the roundabout. I know you don't want to hear it, but 3 of you were all on board to destroy our environment, to deny open space. Our city attorney and your company denied that it was open space. He said it was commercial, and this council did not correct that. We're concerned about this, if there's a conversion of voters. The previous council knew that we had enough voters that wanted to change the majority of the council to be able to change the zoning of our parklands. They knew that, and they denied the voters. We had to go about getting a campaign, spending money, while they were spending money that they didn't have permission to spend. I can't follow all the accounting. I can tell you, I don't want a vanity project next to me. I don't want McGowan City Civic Hall that we heard about. I really don't. And the weed abatement, I appreciate it. I'd like people to know that I was at that council meeting maybe 6 times back, 5 times back. And Bennett was awarded the contract. Fine, seemed reasonable, except he was going to be using the Roundup. I was there to the end to really push against using that poison in our environment with our wildlife, everything. This city council, -2, voted to allow Roundup to be sprayed and to have Bennett be the gatekeeper who had already been spraying in front of the nursery school.
Thank you so much for that.
Right. I'm sure you don't want to hear it, but that's the judgment of this council.
You're welcome to get back in line.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Oh, thank you. Hi, I'm Jonathan Wilner. Christina Wilner is my wife. Yes, we did move here from Los Altos Hills. I think that the one comment I would say is that one of the differences between us and Los Altos Hills is we don't have turnover. So I think that that's a huge factor in the difference between two cities that don't have any commercial interests going on, which is you still have development in that area. And importantly, you also, again, have people moving in and people moving out. There are demographic differences between the two places, but fundamentally, this is a huge change, a huge difference, which also puts a burden in different ways in different places. That's why we discussed the senior exemptions and things like that, because the demographics of PV are very different than Los Altos Hills or Atherton or some of the other places like that. We're not going to have, it seems like, turnover connected potentially to Prop 13. So then we have to live with what we have that's here to figure our way out of the financial problem that we have. It kind of gets to my second topic, which is making the most of the commercial things that we have. I'm a member of the tennis club. I can't be a member of the beach club. It's a 10-year waiting list, right? You talked about the financial management of the golf club. It's great, but it's on top of the subsidization of the city of having the land at all to be able to be available. So if it was not getting the land available, which of course has a commission and things like that are there, but a commercial entity could do different things with this place. We don't necessarily want to have that happen, but at the tennis club, I'd like to potentially have more members, or I'd be willing to pay more for the fee that I have. I'd like to be able to use the beach club in the next 10 years, but I can't because there's a 10-year waiting list, despite the fact that when I walk by the beach club every weekend, there's not a soul visible outside in the space. And I think one of the things what I'm getting at is, are we making the most of it? And do we treasure so much the space and availability and who got here first to be able to be on the list, to be in the places? Is that something we could look at in this time to be able to generate more revenue from folks who would like to use the services that are available to the city?
Great. Thank you.
Mayor Losey, if I could maybe make a couple comments on that.
In 7 seconds.
Well, quick. All right. I'll just say that I agree. I think it is a great time to sort of look at what we have within the city already. I'll also say that one of the things I've learned in this whole process is there's things that are going to be unfair for everybody, right? There's things that are unfair for new families that move in and they're paying childcare in the tens of thousands per year. They're paying tens and tens of thousands on their mortgages. They're paying tens and tens of thousands just in property taxes, right? And they're getting the same services as folks paying tiny fractions of that. In the other direction, we have seniors who are on fixed income, right, where a few $1,000s really means something more to them than it does to some of those younger families. So I think we need to have an open mind as we look at this. And, one of the things we should look at is what can we do to structure things in a way that benefits all of those groups.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Ellen Cook, 40-year resident. Have we considered a property transfer fee or tax? And Could we consider it again if we already have? It seems to me that there is some turnover here. And, a simple either percentage or an actual finite number could really help with this. People do move in, they do move out. And like you said, the values are going up. So why not?
Absolutely. Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to take that one?
Sure. We certainly could consider it. It requires that we be a charter city. So PVE is currently a general law city. We would have to adopt a charter, have our own effective local constitution, go through a process to adopt that. There are some other considerations.
Is that a
minuses,
barrier?
whatever else.
It's a high
Is having
hurdle.
to do it a barrier? No, it's just investing the cross, and it's not just the council; it's the community has to come together and decide to do it. Could we do it? Sure, absolutely. Torrance is for example a charter city. They have their own charter. Various cities have been a little bit more successful in land use lawsuits, fights, etc., than general law cities. So there are some other potential benefits. Downsides, maybe there'll be objections from homeowners that don't want to be taxed in that way or have their estates taxed in that way.
Well,
I believe, if I can just tag on to that, I believe Rancho Palos Verdes did evaluate that at one point in time, and they elected not to do that.
Correct. That is
The-
correct.
the other-
I think, sorry, Errol, were you going to ask another question, Ellen?
no.
I'm sorry.
I was
I
just
thought
going
you
to
were-
argue
Okay, sorry, go
RPP.
ahead.
Yes, just definitely an opportunity. Yes.
One of the downsides with a charter city could be something we want to do, but it would be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of legal fees to get there. And the other challenge with it is, having been 8 years on the planning commission, there have been some proposals to add fees to people who want to remodel or rebuild their homes. In some respects, it has a similar effect as a property transfer tax.
Correct.
One of the concerns I have with that, we're already one of the hardest cities in the state, if not the country, to build or remodel a house between the art jury and the planning commission here. If we make it any harder to sell a home, to remodel a home, etc., nobody's going to want to move here. To the gentleman's point that we don't have much turnover, right? Homes sit on the market here. A lot of homes do. And one of the reasons I think is because of the reputation we have of just how hard it is even to remodel a house. So you got to think about those factors too.
Okay.
But thank you for bringing that up because you remind us that we need to relook at it.
I have a few points. Can you hear me?
Captain, would you introduce yourself, please?
Desiree Myers.
Thank you.
I think that Councilmember Lazaro brings up a fine point about adding to the cost of selling a price and what that means when you try to find a buyer. And if you add the highest parcel tax for any city in the state of California, which you are doing, it will make it harder for us to sell our homes. So that's a factor as well. I want to make a comment on some of the details. You mentioned, one of the speakers mentioned we need more details. And Councilmember McGowan mentioned that it's on the city site. I haven't seen it. And I saw you held something up that I'd seen before in a presentation. The challenge is that isn't detailed. And when you went through the baseline, you added a lot of additional services into the baseline and then extrapolated that as if that was needs. It's not. It's mixed in with a lot of wants. And that's where the separation, I think, needs to occur. Mayor Losey made a fine comment about we need to reach out and speak with the community to understand what is important to you. So we hit the right bell curve and we end up in the middle with what the residents want. And that may not be what you want, Councilmember McGowan, but it's what the community wants. And that's what's really important here. And then another speaker spoke about whether we go for a 66% voter approval versus a 50%. Well, a 50% is going to be very divisive, and that's 50% plus one vote. And that's going to be very divisive if a lot of people can't afford it. So when you talk about fiscal stability, which in the city survey showed as number 3 behind fire and safety, that's the fiscal stability means more to us than perhaps it means to you. For you, it means the city. For us, it means both. There's many people in this community on fixed incomes, and they have to bring stability to their households. So the size of the tax matters to them. And that's why they need a voice, because we don't want to kick people out of our community. We want to hit,
You okay?
I am. Thank you. We want to hit the bell curve. a good way to judge something and keep our community as much as we can. It may not be 100%, but we got to hit a really good nail there, right in the middle. So separating essential and non-essential services has an opportunity here. And I have a suggestion, and that is when you separate them out, why not separate them into a separate tax? Councilman McGowan, you said there's a lot more due diligence that needs to be done on capital. Separate that into a separate tax. It's okay to have two taxes as long as you're forthright in the beginning. We need two, and we're come back. We're going to have two of them in front of you. And so people know that ahead of time. It's not like there's a hidden tax later. But also that second tax gives you time to put in some efficiencies. And there's a lot of efficiencies this city can put in place that will save us millions. I have many suggestions. I can show them to you. I'm more than happy to sit down with you. But we need to consider that, hey, if you're asking the residents to make a sacrifice, the city needs to do the due diligence too and do the work and show this is really essential and we've all worked together and we've determined this is what we really need.
I'm going to have you, thank you. I'm going to have you finish up your thoughts.
That was about it. What I'm trying to do is trying to put together something I think that brings the community together, acknowledging what you're saying, and that is we need a tax. We absolutely do. But coming up with the solution, listening to the residents, and thank you so much for this extensive opportunity for us to speak. Very much appreciated. Really, really nice. But bringing us together on something positive, and I think you're going in that direction. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Des, do you have a number that you'd like to propose? You've thought about this more than anyone else except for the council members, I think.
I do, but it's premature for me to say that without showing why. But I think we have something that will really work here for the residents.
Good. And I have an idea for you, and we'll hold that thought to the end.
I can't put it back in.
Oh, is it not going to want to go in? Michelle, do you want to put that in there?
Hi, my name is Michelle Rosen, and I moved here 5 years ago from Hillsborough. And I will tell you, Hillsborough has zero commercial, Atherton has zero commercial, and they are both in much more easily accessible locations than PV. And I think that makes a huge difference. I mean, Hillsborough's equidistant between San Francisco and Palo Alto. You couldn't ask for much more. Atherton has minimum 1 acre parcels next to Menlo Park, Stanford. I mean, you're in a totally different ballgame. I find it very frustrating that we don't actually have more commercial. And I wish that was something that we could do. And it seemed like it would really benefit the community. My question is, I don't understand what it takes to get the parcel tax on the ballot. Can you explain that to me since I'm kind of new?
Going to do that, Mayor Burcham? Anybody else down there? Don't all jump in.
I'll go. Okay. So, I mean, there's basically two pathways. Pathway number one is the city council can vote to put it on any particular ballot. There are both regular election, general elections, and special elections. They cost different amounts of money, and we can simply, 5 of us vote, put it on, choose the amount, choose any other special parameters like exemption for seniors. We can set the amount that would be exempted, et cetera, et cetera.
Whether or not it's
if we did that, whether or not it sunsets, et cetera. If we did that, it would require 66% to pass. The other possibility is a citizens group could come together, collect signatures, raise enough signatures to bring a proposal forward. I believe the city council then technically needs to certify those signatures. And then once we do that, it appears on the next ballot. If that occurs, there's a state court case that basically has said it actually only requires 50% plus 1 vote to pass. So basically, those are the two possibilities. But technically here, we're really here today, mainly to talk and kind of calibrate about the needs that we believe are there, and then how exactly we get there. There's still a little bit of time to figure that out.
So what election would you prefer that a parcel tax ballot, be on?
So at this point, I think the earliest it could possibly be would would be June of next year. So about a year from now. So again, there's still a little bit of time to figure some of this out.
How many actual households are in PV? Not population, but households.
Like 5,200.
5,200.
Yeah.
And what's the population? 13,000?
13,500.
And so
With 9,000 something of
plus
that
one of
voters.
the population, correct? Not households.
There's about 10,000 registered voters.
Right.
The other 3,500 are kids.
Well, they could, who knows what could happen. Well, sure we can. Just kidding.
Like Michelle.
No, the government's so crazy right now. How could the let's say the golf club, are they at capacity for membership like the tennis club is?
I think all of our concessions have a wait list.
They're in a wait list?
They're all full.
Okay. All right.
Even the stables.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Michelle.
Here we go.
Thank you. And I appreciate a second opportunity to talk about trust, because that's what this is really based on. Can we trust what you're saying to be true? Will you notify the neighbors? I got notified recently about something that was occurring, but my neighbor next door didn't. I'm sorry to say, but there's been a lot of skullduggery, and it weakens our strength. I hope that it improves, but why aren't you guys showing the liability of that recent Bay Boys litigation that left us at $1.66 million judgment? The previous city council made decisions that cost us this, that kept us litigating. These are judgments, and I know it's hard to count everything, guys, but you need to put your ear out, because there's a lot that's not right. And I appreciate the look forward, but the issues in the infrastructure with the city hall I'd like to speak about, since I live next door and I walk by there every day. I'm sure we can improve the waterproofing. My house is 19 years old. That's the problem with my house, is waterproofing. That's aged. I haven't heard about the firemen using the empty dead space in the city hall's lobby below that is an obvious give to them for space. Doesn't have to be a big expensive thing. It just has to be wanted. Just like not spraying roundabout has to be understood by our community. I wonder if Hillsborough does that to their wildlife. We've talked about this, and I think it's certainly still occurring. And it is a major mistake to be poisoning our environment.
Would you mind if I take a minute that we have and try to positively respond to these to be helpful?
No, thank you. I'm done.
So you, and I'm not saying this to debate you or push back on you or put you down. I'm trying to actually be collaborative and respond. The Bay Boys case went on for about 8 years, and there were numerous city councils that were involved in that. And without going into sort of confidential settlement or anything else, there was a lot of advice over time, and the way that case went, that advice morphed and shifted based on changes in the law and things that occurred. Had that case not been settled for $1.7 million cash, the city was facing liabilities involving the Coastal Commission and others of northward of 30 odd $million. So we made intelligent decisions around that. Let's go to the round.
We're going to stop there. And actually, I know you were going to segue to the roundabout. And so, Ms. Hampson, I'm going to invite you, please, to come to our Tuesday council meeting, because this very topic of our landscape maintenance contract and the pros and cons of using herbicides is an agenda item. And you've mentioned it twice, so obviously it's important to you. So I'm going to ask you to come to Tuesday's meeting and participate in that one.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that, but we were speaking right now about the decisions with the.
No, but time is up and I need to go to the next speaker. Thank you.
Oh, go ahead. I'll get in line again.
She's getting back on line.
I've lived here for 38 years. In the first few decades.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Can you hear me?
We can.
I was not able to follow politics, but I want to ask why two city councilmen and the city manager are using city letterhead to try and cajole the ABC after.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Parker. That's not the topic of tonight. And public comment at the special meeting is limited to the agenda item. So I'm going to ask you to just keep your comments to the budget and fiscal long range plans.
Hi, I'm Jeff Garrett. I've lived here for 5 years, spent the past 3.5 years or so struggling getting my permits, remodeling my house. Okay.
Is the remodel done and are you having an open house for all of us?
First 2 phases are done.
Okay.
I am a general contractor, was anyway, retired. I may be a little, I haven't gotten really involved because of all this work I've been doing. But it seems to me you guys are struggling for dollars here, there, all this different stuff. It may sound simplistic, but why haven't you gotten a good litigator and sued the county or the state and tried to get the percentages we're supposed to get?
In a couple of words.
You got to win the case. You got to sue them and win.
I like the energy. But in a couple of words, probably we'd lose. I mean, Prop 13 was pretty clear about how you set these allocations and where the power lies with any sort of possible change to that. And the bottom line is it was set, I believe, in 1979. And the only change that happened is 86 when we lost the fire department. And to revisit that through litigation, and especially very bluntly with the political lens of what it looks like of an affluent community like ours suing to try to take more money away from the county. I mean, I wish it were different.
To get your percentage, to get an equal percentage of what you're.
Well, actually, let me just say, and because, I think a lot of people have raised this. So the property taxes are a zero-sum game. So for us to get more than our 11.3, some other city or group of cities would have to give up.
Yeah.
So that we can take. Do you know any that are going to actually say, "Oh yes, let me give Palos Verdes states more"?
You're getting a smaller percentage than everybody else.
Mayor, can I jump in really quick?
Sure.
I think one thing that might be confusing about this and make the disparity look even larger than it is that when those surrounding cities, when you allocate that 23, from the 23 is directed to the county the costs that are associated with providing fire. So they keep a remaining amount that is not the 23. Right? We get 11, which is more than they actually get in cash, but then we have to turn around and pay for the fire contract.
Yeah.
So the disparity is not 12 cents that we have to go sue over losing half our money. The disparity is much, much smaller than that.
So you're losing even more.
No.
Less. No. It's less.
Less. Far less.
Much less. It's a sliver.
The disparity between us and the other PD cities is about 1 to 2 million.
I see.
Yeah. It's not easy to fathom because it makes no intuitive sense, of course, because it's a county. Thanks for that. Thank you. Did you have other questions?
No, that was pretty much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Lynn?
Hi. I'm Lynn Solomita. We've lived here for 27 years. And as many of you know, I've been somewhat involved with the city since Measure A. And I think what is maybe not appreciated is how hard our city councils have worked to make sure that we have the police and fire services that we not only need. I, for one, don't want the sheriff coming from Lomita or, God forbid, Norwalk. I like the fact, especially as I get older, that we have paramedics here who can be at my house in 5 minutes, probably less since I live half a mile from here. And I want to thank all of you for doing what you're doing. And you are showing us where some of the money is going. And yes, some of it is wants, but a lot more of it is needs. And I think if it actually came down to a vote, you would find that most of the people in this community are here for the schools, the police, and the fire. And we're retired, we're on a fixed income. I don't want to pay more taxes, but if that's what it takes to keep this community what we all love, then I think you have to give us the opportunity to do that, to vote on it. And yes, I think, we should know where the money is going. If you're spending $2 million trimming trees, maybe we ought to know that. But I think the more important issue is what as a community we really want our tax monies to be going to and what we're willing to pay for. Thank you.
Lynn, that was so nicely said. Thank you. Okay. So now just to set expectations, again, as I told Mr. Parker, public comment is limited to the agenda item, that means it's limited to the long-range financial plan.
Surely.
Thank you.
So let us go back.
Oh, no, I did say that people could get back in line.
Well, you don't have to listen, sir. It's my time too.
We're almost at the end here. I think I see a couple.
I would like to go back to the settlement that our city...
Sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. This is related to the police department, isn't it?
Okay, make your point.
The foundation of that lawsuit that we lost was because the police department was found not to be advocating.
That's not true.
Okay, you can get it. The report's there. Please tell me.
Ma'am, I was in every closed session for over 6 years. That's not true.
Please tell me, why aren't you discussing this liability? It matters.
We've discussed it ad nauseum. We've put out press releases that are all publicly
not related
available.
To Measure E.
Okay.
Sorry.
Understand
that. Not related to Measure E.
You're off topic, and I'm going to go to Mr.
No, I'm
Amos.
not.
You are off topic, and I'm going to go to Mr. Amos.
Police tax, which I personally support that.
Okay. It's not about police taxing. It's not about Measure E.
Hi, Bob Amos, and I probably can finish this. I just want to applaud the City Council for your work, the homework that was done, the spreadsheets that actually are on the website. I reviewed them. There's like 5 or 6 of them that go into extreme detail of what I think that, David, you were proposing. I know there's a lot of work to do this. City councils have historically come and gone. Things have changed, but I think this group here is addressing outright the fundamental issue in front of us, which is how do we fund this city going forward? I'm a resident for 45 years in Lanada Bay, and will support any effort that's done so that the city can continue to grow, and again, applaud the work done by the City Council.
Thank you, Bob. We appreciate that. Last but not least.
Oh, thank you. Let's see, my name is Joe Campanella, and Councilman McGowan, that was a painful presentation. It was accurate and compelling and understandable, but it made it more painful. We are in a tough situation. We just don't have enough money. Now, what we could do is repossess this and make it Terranea North. We could make the Beach Club a bed and breakfast. But I like the way we live right now. Chief Halinga, you're one of the top reasons I live in this city. The police department is in the top row. The reason I got up this evening is I just want to express my support. I don't want to pay more taxes, but if I have to pay more taxes to live the way I do, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. On that note, boy, we're going to pull this in right at the 8:30 hard stop. So this is the second large town hall that we have hosted. And so this format, this kind of big group format works well for sort of us sharing information with you. So us pushing information out, not great for interactive, although I think we did better noticing the interactive public comments. I think that did help and that made it better. So I'd like to offer, I'm going to start with Ms. Myers. So I would like to offer up any council member, our city manager, our staff, to attend small group meetings so that you can, do you have a book club? Do you have a neighborhood that is very active? Do you have a mahjong club? Do you have your bridge club? And so because what we want to do is we want to attend smaller meetings where we can dive into the details of the specific issues that matter to you. And so, if you're willing to host a coffee, if you're willing to, my personal favorite, wine and cheese would be nice, but okay, I'll go for coffee. You drink a lot of coffee in this job, let me tell you. So, anyway, I will say you can always, I think most people know how, why, thank you. Most people probably know how to contact the city staff and city hall. Everybody knows how to find me, but my email is vlosey@pvestates.org. Always happy to come to meetings. We'll come to you for smaller conversations because we are committed to connecting with as many people in the community as we can. And the city manager handed me that email address that I promised we'd put out at the end, which is communications@pvestates.org. So do not hesitate. We are happy to do it. And I think really from here on out, smaller groups really are more productive because we really can sit down and say, do we need this? And do we need that? And is this a must have? And can we get rid of that? So, with that, thank you for joining us this evening and for the care and thought you bring to our shared future. All your input guiding us. We will all work together. I am so confident to keep Palos Verdes estate safe, well-maintained, and really financially secure for generations to come and really preserve the character of the community that we all love. So thank you for coming.